Okay, so I'm going to introduce the FI-PPP. Obviously, we only have about 6 minutes, so it's going to be very fast. And Juanjo will say more about the FI-PPP from other perspectives. So essentially, the Future Internet PPP is part of the EU's response to the credit crunch and the subsequent recessions. So it's very much aiming at bringing together end-user pull and technology push and trying to get them to converge onto some new market opportunities to generate somehow growth, improve efficiency and so forth. So you can think of the PPP as a kind of a collection of test beds, but it's a bit different from FIRE because the purpose isn't really to investigate technology, it's to investigate markets and business opportunities. So the work program is divided into phases and objectives. So there are 3 phases. We're now just getting started on phase 2. Essentially, phase 1 was about the platform for the future internet, some kind of common platform. Phase 2 is about trials, and phase 3 is about expansion. And the 4 different objectives, one is concerned with the technology, how you access the technology and uniformity of access. One is about capacity building, which is about essentially test beds and infrastructure. And one is about use cases, which is applications and markets. And there's a facilitation objective as well. So we can go on for 5 slides about that if you want. But the key is really that the technology foundation is there to provide some commoditization of access to resources, right? So you should be able to access future internet resources, by which I mean clouds, sensors, people, anything, in a uniform, inexpensive and easy way. It's supposed to reduce development costs. The use cases are all about validation and increasing the expansion. So increasing the range of applications and increasing the demand for those applications through trials. And capacity building is about defragmentation of the capacity that exists in Europe. So there are many sensor nets, for example. There are many smart cities, some of which are smart streets rather than smart cities. Some are smart farms, some are smart spaces, and so on. But they're all kind of different and distinct. So the idea of capacity building is to bring those things together so that you can address Europe rather than one city or street or farm at a time. And also to try and bring applications together on those infrastructures. So instead of having different applications in each city or each street or each farm, hopefully we'll have applications that can be common across much of Europe. And that, of course, increases the size of the market for the developers of such applications. So this is all about somehow defragmenting and thereby creating market potential in Europe. Okay, so if you look at the program, we did this in the architecture board of the FI-PPP, you realize there are some tensions, okay? So the 3, apart from the facilitation objective, the other 3 are really there to bring in different communities. The use cases are all about bringing in service providers and end users. The technology foundation projects, including the core platform development, is really targeting developers. And the capacity building theme is really targeting the operators of these smart spaces and other infrastructure. And somehow we have to bring all these things together. And you can see that each corner of the diagram is kind of giving something and expecting to receive something. So we need some kind of complementarity between the activities. So in particular, if you look at the infrastructure corner, effectively what we're trying to do there is make it possible to replicate things across different infrastructures. So if you've got an application in Istanbul and you move to Madrid, you'll find the same kind of things there, operating in the same way, hopefully from the same service providers, and they can achieve the economies of scale thereby. If you look at the infrastructure with respect to the developers, what the FI-PPP is trying to do is provide interoperability, and the infrastructures provide the capacity to run things if you can make them interoperable. So these are the kinds of things you're looking for. And when we analyzed this, we found there are lots of places where the approach needs to be consistent, and often what you need is a diversity of consistent approaches. So if this all works, what you get is simpler access to resources through sort of common software interfaces. That leads to lower application development costs. This allows more applications to exist in more places, and that in turn increases the return on investment for infrastructure investors, so people building test beds or operational infrastructures. So this is the kind of virtuous circle, but you need the things to line up in the correct way. So Juanjo is going to talk about the viewpoint from the technology foundations addressing the developers. I want to focus a bit more on the infrastructure operators. So this is typically what you get in a future internet application, right? You've got data sources which are usually heterogeneous, include sensors, users, and so on, and some kind of data center where you aggregate the data and analyze it. So you can look at questions, right, and trade-offs. Do we want a dedicated data center for our application, or are we willing to share with other applications? So depending on which way you go, you can increase or decrease the cost to the application service provider, but you also have to trade off with other things. So for example, if you're handling very sensitive data, many users and many service providers would not want to go down the shared facility route. So there are trade-offs there, and it's clear that for different applications you might need to look at different solutions to that trade-off. Similarly, do you want centralized or distributed data analysis? If you go for centralized, it eases various things. You can imagine improving portability problems, because some of your applications don't need to be ported, they'll always run in the same place. And of course, if you centralize data and aggregate more, you have more potential to do interesting things with it, assuming that you're allowed to, of course. On the other hand, you create a single point of failure. And that single point of failure could be a security single point of failure. If your data center is hacked, you lose everything. But it could also be an economic or a business dependency. If we all depend on Google, then we kind of give all the power to Google. So there are different solutions again, and one has to look at different approaches. So there's the FI-PPP Architecture Board released a white paper last year, just highlighting some of these questions, and maybe we need to continue that discussion now phase 2 is up and running, and see what solutions people are using in other programs like FIRE. So I didn't want to go into this in detail. There are various challenges we've identified in the Infinity project, and it looks like different kinds of infrastructure should meet them in different ways. I'm planning to discuss this tomorrow, actually, in the Infinity Consultation Board meeting. So I'm not going to go into that in detail now, but what I can say is that really we need infrastructures to engage. So people who are running test beds or operational systems, we need them to engage. And there are 2 projects in the capacity building end of the FI-PPP. Infinity is about identifying infrastructure capacity. There's an online repository which is interesting, it's worth looking, it's worth registering if you're operating infrastructure. Provides some matchmaking facilities and search facilities, and the Infinity project is analysing the data and trying to identify things that we need to address, challenges that have to be overcome. We're developing a roadmap to try and indicate how we could do that. And the XIFI project is addressing integration and federation. So integration is about integrating infrastructures into FI-PPP experiments by adapting the existing capacity, installing software, and so on. Federation is there to address the fragmentation issues. We're also looking at business models for infrastructures within a federation and for a federation, and supporting trials and sharing best practice. So these are 2 projects where infrastructures can get involved, and it makes sense, I think, to discuss in detail how we can do that with FIRE participants. That's everything from me. I don't know, should Juanjo come up and then maybe we can take questions?
I guess we get a whole PPP story on the floor, and then
so I'll stay up here.
Okay, we've got a machine to connect.